In accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court...
Hey! Whoa, 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 hey!
Set preliminary hearing for next week.
What's up?
Go now.
This is Deobra Redden, who's facing charges for attempted battery in Nevada. 30-year-old Redden was arrested after he allegedly attacked a man with a baseball bat. He pleaded guilty and faced a possible sentence of 1 to 4 years in prison. At his sentencing, Redden had a calm and matter-of-fact exchange with Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Holthus.
Based on my criminal history, I feel that I shouldn't be sent to prison for a second time.
Have you looked at your criminal history? Have you looked at your criminal history?
I've actually just, I looked at it.
I mean, you lived it, I suppose.
I just looked at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Judge Holthus then reminded Redden of his criminal history.
3 felonies, a gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs. Got a lot going on, sir.
Yeah, I just figured
battery on a protected person, robberies, attempt home invasion.
Redden, who struggled with mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, tried to convince the judge that he deserved a second chance.
I feel like I shouldn't be sent to prison, but if it's appropriate for you, then you have to do what you have to do. But I figured that, if I'm in a better place in my life, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not out there committing crimes now, and I feel like I should be given a shot because I'm in a better place than I was.
But Judge Holthus was having none of it.
I appreciate that, but I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because I just can't with that history.
This is when things got crazy.
Hey! Whoa, 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 hey!
Redden launched over the courtroom bench and headed straight for Judge Holthus. Eventually, deputies were able to restrain him. As alarms went off in the courtroom, people started to call for help.
That's affirmative. Medical is requested. Judge's chambers.
Yeah, be advised. 515's got a big laceration to his head. Judge hit her head into the wall, and I got an inmate that's bleeding up here.
It's going to be a positive transport to UMC for a marshal.
Be advised. I'm also going to need a biohazard cleanup for a lot of blood on the floor.
It was later found that Redden allegedly punched Judge Holthus and pulled out parts of her hair. One marshal had to be hospitalized and needed 25 stitches after suffering a forehead injury, as well as a dislocated shoulder. A few days later, Redden was seen in court again, heavily shackled and wearing a spit mask for the sentencing of his initial assault case.
Good morning. All right, this is on for the continuation of Mr. Redden's sentencing. For purposes of the record, I want to make it clear that I am not changing or modifying the sentence I was in the process of imposing last week before I was interrupted by defendant's actions. All right, that being said, in accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court does now sentence you, in addition to the $25 administrative assessment fee, $150 DNA fee, the $3 DNA administrative assessment fee, and $250 indigent defense fee, 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections.
Additionally, he faced 13 new charges for the attack on Judge Holthus, including attempted murder, battery, and extortion by threat. If convicted, Redden could spend decades in prison. Deobra Redden is a prime example of a convict acting crazy in court. However, whatever a man can do, a woman can do better. Like in the case of Melissa Hardwick, who was in Russell and Wayne County Family Court in Kentucky for a domestic violence hearing. Melissa's ex-husband had filed a domestic violence order against her.
Your statements in your petition as part of your testimony, but I need you to tell me briefly, in your own words, what happened to cause you to ask for a domestic violence order.
Yes, Your Honor. Things have been escalating, I guess, since the first of the year, and Melissa's had a couple MIWs and a couple arrests, and she got out of jail, and I I guess, April, and she started, we hadn't really had anything personal up until that point. She got out of jail in April.
He was explaining the situation when suddenly Melissa erupted.
My personal life is
No.
your business, John. It has nothing to do with
Miss
you
Hardwick,
boys. No.
you will be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
I don't care. I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to him.
She will be arrested for contempt of the court.
It doesn't make any difference.
You will serve 10 days for contempt of court.
She was arrested for contempt and sentenced to 10 days in jail. This is when things got crazy.
Go now.
Melissa leapfrogged towards the judge, but thankfully, court deputies stopped her just in time. However, that did not stop her verbal threats.
Wait and see. Get my bracelet off the floor.
Melissa faced additional criminal charges for her antics.
A new judge will have to be appointed to represent because she will be charged criminally for the threats that were made in open court today.
Eventually, Melissa was sentenced to 120 days in prison for her outburst. While Melissa Hardwick got off easy for her antics in court, how does it compare to spitting on a judge? Like in the case of 30-year-old Bass Webb, who's in court on attempted murder charges. CCTV footage outside a Kentucky jail showed Webb, a former inmate who spent 3 months there on assault charges, intentionally hitting 2 prison workers with his car. While one guy managed to dodge it, the other was not so lucky. Webb was arrested and produced in court before Judge Vanessa Dixon. Since she knew the 2 jail employees beforehand, Judge Dixon decided to recuse herself from the case.
There's no way I'm going to try this case or have any further proceedings, or I have to see you for one further second.
But what Webb did next shocked the whole courtroom.
Set preliminary hearing for next week.
Webb literally spat on Judge Dixon, clearly taking her by surprise.
Charge.
After initially dismissing him, Judge Dixon brought Webb back, charged him, and threw him out of the courtroom. Nevertheless, this is not the end of Webb's defiance of the law. While awaiting trial, Webb started a riot with other inmates inside the Fayette County Detention Center. Webb was shot with beanbag bullets and even hit in the neck with a pepper ball. In retaliation, Webb swung a metal telephone box at a corrections officer. He was charged again for his actions and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I will accept the jury's recommendation of 5 years on count 1, enhanced to 15 years pursuant to the persistent felony offender of first degree.
Additionally, Webb was convicted of attempting to murder the 2 jail employees and got an additional 37 years, facing a total of 52 years of prison time. During this time, new evidence came up linking Webb to the unsolved murder of his ex-girlfriend Bria Runewitz. While incarcerated, Webb had bragged to a detective about murdering the 32-year-old. To escape the death penalty, Webb pleaded guilty and got an additional 50 years in prison. Now, if that wasn't enough, 5 years later, another cold case came to haunt Webb. This time, he was charged with the murder of another ex-girlfriend, Sabrina Vaughn. This time, Webb appeared in court with a sinister tattoo on his head. It had a murder hit list of all the people he intended to kill, including all judges, all prosecutors, all cops, the media, 3 rats that had been crossed out, and many more. Webb was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
You have found the defendant guilty of the offense of intentional murder.
While Bass Webb's audacious acts in the courtroom shocked everyone, how does it compare to elbowing your own lawyer? Like in the case of Joseph Zeeler, a double murder suspect in Cape Coral, Florida. Back in May 1990, 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter Lisa Story were found assaulted and murdered at their home. The gruesome scene was discovered by Robin's mom, Jan Cornell, who called 911.
911. There's someone in my house. Someone broke in my house. I think my daughter's dead. Oh my God, please. Nan, please just calm down with me. Oh my God.
The case went cold for over 2 decades until Zeeler was arrested in 2016 for shooting and injuring his son. His DNA was collected and entered into the database, which matched the DNA evidence from the 1990 crime scene.
Now, Joseph Zeeler was actually arrested for another crime, and that's how detectives were able to get his fingerprints and DNA samples. His sample was put into a database called CODIS, and that database also stores unknown DNA samples, including those from the Cornell Story case. Now, when the system ran, that's when detectives got a hit linking Zeeler to this 26-year-old murder case.
Zeeler was further arrested and charged with capital murder. In court, prosecutors sought the death penalty.
The kind of factors which makes what the defendant did to Robin Cornell and Lisa Story so grave, so serious, that death is the appropriate recommendation, that death is the appropriate sentence.
Zeeler then took the stands. He initially denied knowing both the victims and Jan.
Do you know Jan Cornell?
No, I don't know Jan Cornell.
Do you know Lisa Story?
No.
Do you know Robin Cornell?
No.
But later said his DNA was at the crime scene because he and Jan were involved in intimate acts the night before the murders.
And what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash their sheets.
He even called the victim's mother a pig.
Your DNA would have still been there 5 months later.
Yes.
And that's because they're pigs and they don't wash their sheets,
exactly.
Right? You know that?
Well, I assume that. Just like you're assuming that.
But just so the record's clear, when I said they're pigs and they wash their sheets, that's what you said.
Absolutely.
Zeeler then claimed that the prosecutor was framing him.
Well, the DNA witnesses, did you hear them say that they actually did retest NB32, that they actually took the sheet, recut another sample, and had another analyst do the same test? Did you hear that?
Yes.
So the retesting was done.
I believe FDLE is siding with the prosecution. Of course they're going to say that.
Eventually, the jury found Zeeler guilty of first-degree murder.
Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Robin Cornell. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Lisa Story.
But what Zeeler did next left the whole courtroom stunned. At his sentencing, Zeeler appeared in handcuffs. First, he asked his attorney for a private discussion.
What's that?
As the attorney leaned in, Zeeler threw a cheap shot with his elbow. Thankfully, detectives quickly subdued him.
Shirley, are you okay? I'm fine.
I am relaxed. I'm calm. Relax.
Meanwhile, the lawyer saw the funny side of the incident.
I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that.
After the dust settled, it was time for Zeeler to learn his fate.
The court's review of other capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty would be a proportionate sentence in this case. Therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live.
He was sentenced to the death penalty.
Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant, Joseph Adam Zeeler, is hereby sentenced to death for the murder of Robin Cornell and the murder of Lisa Story.
While Joseph Zeeler's attack on his defense seemed premeditated, how does it compare to punching someone out of the blue? Like in the case of Christopher Teal, who was in the King County courtroom facing sexual assault charges in Seattle, Washington. Reports suggest that Teal, a homeless man, followed a woman inside a restroom at a Volkswagen dealership and assaulted her. He was arrested after company employees barged in and stopped the attack. Teal was charged with first-degree sexual assault and unlawful imprisonment. He appeared in court for a competency hearing represented by his lawyer, Reed Birkland. As the hearing began, Teal seemed amused and raised his arm towards Birkland before being stopped by a court officer.
Mr. Teal's present. He's in custody. He's represented by counsel, Mr. Birkland.
Then suddenly, without provocation, Teal snapped.
Standing from his counsel, who I'll defer to in a moment, that they are now stipulating that Mr.
Out of nowhere, Teal punched his own lawyer. Luckily, the police quickly managed to subdue him.
Put your hand behind your back now.
A spit hood was placed over his head, and Teal was removed from the courtroom. Birkland was unhurt in the incident, barring his pride. He promptly withdrew from the case.
Regarding the Christopher Teal matter.
No.
Okay. I have a question though. Are you running a diminished capacity or insanity or anything of that nature?
I don't have anything to talk to you about.
The next time Teal appeared in court, the officers ensured he wouldn't be punching anyone. Teal was seen heavily strapped to a chair. However, he still had one complaint. Teal's biggest concern was how his hair looked in his mugshot.
I'd like to know where the they got that photo of me with my short hair. Because that was on Facebook, and I don't have a Facebook.
All right.
So you're on it. Legitimate question. Like, do they have access to Google?
The judge scheduled another hearing in a week's time. Eventually, Teal was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. While Teal's reaction could certainly be dismissed as a mental health issue, what happens when you get into a wrestling match with the manage to overpower her? Crazy, but how does it compare to headbutting a police officer? Like in the case of Daniel Stewart Berry, who's facing robbery charges in Mississippi. Reports suggest that 21-year-old Daniel allegedly robbed a store where he leapt over the counter, put a female clerk in a headlock, and grabbed $20 from the open cash register. Daniel, a business major student, was arrested and charged with 1 count of strong-armed robbery. But when Daniel was being taken to court, he totally lost it.
What's up?
Daniel cursed and headbutted a sheriff's deputy, breaking his nose. He was quickly carried off and detained. The sheriff said Daniel was under the influence of drugs and had also assaulted a jail worker the previous night.
I don't know what this is or how much he's taken or whatever, but we'll have to get him evaluated by a doctor, but we've got to determine a safe way to do it for the doctor and for him and for us.
He faced additional charges of